Hello, my name is Gina Becker. I'm with Contigo Counseling and Coaching Services, and I'm here to continue to talk to you about trauma and how trauma can be resolved. In the last video, I mentioned the different levels of trauma, and I wanted to go ahead and continue talking about the flight, fight, and freeze mode, most commonly known as fight and flight. These are emotions that are centered in the amygdala, which is a part of the brain, and they are uh, developed pretty early in a fetus that is being formed in the mother's womb. Okay, so I want to go ahead and mention that the autonomic system, which is something I talked about last time, and you could just think of it as the automatic part of our body and our functioning, which allows you to just do automatic things like breathing. You don't think about breathing, or maybe going to the bathroom. Lots of different functions that you just do normally. Okay, and these are things that your autonomic system continues to work uh, most of the time. Okay, in dementia patients, you will find that this is the last thing to go. Okay, where they are have trouble at the end of their stage of dementia, and maybe have trouble with swallowing and breathing, and that's when you are aware that the dementia patient might be getting ready to continue to move on to the next life. Okay. All right. So if you have any questions, I'd like to hear from you, and I'd like for you to post those in the comments. Maybe you have some comments yourself, and uh, and also give me a thumbs up. All right. So the flight, fight, and freeze tend to come up automatically. Okay, and they are connected to the autonomic system, where trauma may have been when you experienced trauma, you are continuing to uh, uh, experience that automatic response. Okay, of flight, fight, and freeze. So when you are triggered, and I talked about that last time, a trigger could be something like there's a certain smell, or maybe even a season, or maybe you see something or hear something, and that triggers a memory. And it might not be a conscious memory, it could be a subconscious memory, which is connected to the autonomic system, and you begin to feel frightful, or you begin to feel hypervigilant. Maybe you are um, uh, having flashbacks or something like that, and you're not always connecting the association, but the association to the trigger, or what is triggering you and what happened in your past, is what is going on, and that is when you are in a stuck mode. This is unresolved trauma. Okay, so I want to go ahead and talk about how that is connected, and how we need to get to that original area of trauma, okay, where that came in. Okay, and in my method, this is something that we automatically do. What I'm trying to do here in the last few videos, and in uh, probably a few more videos, is to educate you enough to let you know, okay, is there an issue? Is there a problem? Most of you already know there's something not right. Okay, otherwise you wouldn't be watching this video. Maybe you're watching for somebody else, somebody you're working with, somebody that is a family member, somebody, a friend that you're concerned about, or maybe yourself. We talked about this, that statistics say that there are at least 53%, I think it was, that have experienced trauma. I suspect that that's a lot higher. Okay, because if you look at our culture today, 2022, there are so many people that walk around with issues like relationship problems, anger problems, lack of motivation. All of these things are evidence of trauma, and I will talk further about that in a future video. Okay, so if you like what I'm saying so far, give me a thumbs up and subscribe so that you can connect to the next videos that come along. Okay, so if you are stuck in this trauma, okay, and as I mentioned, it could even happen in the mother's womb. Maybe the mother was exposed to an environment that was toxic, whether it was chemically or emotionally toxic, and we will talk about toxic families soon, and toxic relationships, and how that affects us individually. Okay. Also, the chemicals. Let's say the mother lived in an area that was chemically saturated. Okay. Or let's say she herself was doing drugs or inducing alcohol. Okay. So that would affect the child. Okay. These are all non-organic traumatic experiences, and meaning it wasn't genetic cerebral palsy, although there are genetics that play a role in continuing trauma from family to family systems. Okay, so most likely if you came from a family that was toxic and had lots of problems with relationships, problems with uh, 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 self-esteem, and other issues that resulted from trauma, then we usually pass that on to our children. And so one of the reasons I'm doing the video is to help you get unstuck from the trauma. And there is a possibility, there is a way to get unstuck from that trauma. And I've been saying that trauma can be resolved. And also break the cycle of trauma so that you don't push that into the next generation in your children's lives, okay, and their children's lives. Okay, so when trauma is induced, and I'm looking at my notes, I just want to go ahead and do that for a minute. Excess hormones, which we normally need, okay, and I mentioned some of the reactions to trauma in the animal kingdom, and related it to the human world. Where if a child falls off a bicycle, and that's traumatic, let's say they're 3, 5, 6, whatever, and for them that is a traumatic event. And if they aren't soothed and comforted instead of dismissed and brushed off, or told to suck it up and get back on that bike, then that trauma can get lodged in there. It doesn't mean that you coddle them. It means that you recognize that was traumatic, that was scary, okay? Just like it might have been scary for you when you took a fall and riding your bicycle, okay? Or walking down the street or whatever and taking a fall, okay? So that's the thing, is that's what humans do for each other, or induce trauma by not doing that for each other. Okay, being supportive, being available, being uh, 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 available. Okay, so emotionally and mentally, and just being a support. Okay, so I want to go ahead and let you know that the excessive hormones that are being produced would be things like cortisol. Okay, so if cortisol is excessively induced, this could affect belly fat. Too much cortisol can affect the body, the physical body. Let's say let's say you're a child still, and you've had trauma, well, you'll have trouble with the executive part of your brain functioning, which is the frontal lobes, where they're not fully developed, and they don't develop until about the 20s. Okay, most likely for women, it's anywhere from 18 to 22, and for men, usually around 25 to 27 years of age. The frontal lobes are the executive part of the brain, what we call the executive part of the brain. What does that mean to you? That's the judgment part. That is the part that makes decisions. That is the part that thinks things through. That is the part that has common sense, okay? So oftentimes that part is affected and is not able to develop properly. And the learning part, okay, so if you're a child and you've experienced trauma, and let's say it's not just a single event, it's multiple events, then that trauma becomes complex, and that child begins to continue to experience problems, okay, usually in all the way to their 50s. I mean, it's a very sad situation. So I would like for you to tell me, if I'm making sense so far, and you want to hear more. Please comment, and if you haven't given a thumbs up so far, please do so. Okay. I want to let you know that trauma can be resolved. Trauma can be it's devastating. Depending on, I mean, it doesn't even, it could just be a single event. But when it's happened over and over and over again, that is when it becomes incredibly, incredibly devastating to one person which is affected to other people. For example, if a mother or father have experienced trauma, not only can they pass that on to their children, or become unavailable to their children. Maybe they become emotionally unavailable, which is a form of abandonment. We talked about that briefly. Maybe they are on drugs and alcohol because they're self-medicating because they've been traumatized. Maybe they've become stuck in the fight mode, and they fight with everybody, including their children. Okay. So that is why we want to resolve this trauma. In addition to that, the person who experienced trauma has problems with self-esteem, shame and guilt. All of these things play a role, okay? Feelings like nobody really cares about them, or feelings of being lonely or alone, feelings of, there's also mental health issues, obsessive compulsive disorder, eating disorders. I mentioned anxiety and depression in the past. So there's a lot that happens as a result of trauma. And this is unresolved trauma, because everybody is going to have trauma. There's a great scripture, and Job mentions, surely as sparks fly upward, man is born to trouble. Okay, so just like sparks will always fly upward, we will always have trouble. But to be able to resolve that and learn the tools that are necessary in childhood, like self-soothing, being able to self-soothe, because when you fell off that bicycle, or when somebody touched you inappropriately, or somebody spoke to you with anger and rage, that somebody else came along and said, you know what, you're still okay. You are a good person. There's nothing wrong with you. That is not about you. That is about that person who did that to you. Or you fell off a bike and that happens. It hurts. But I'm here to be with you. And you can ride this bike. You're going to be successful. You're going to be okay. Everything's going to be all right. If you didn't have that, that was a lack of parenting or a lack of support that you needed, and you need to be reparented. You need to go back and visit that, and not necessarily. I'm not an advocate of trying to uncover trauma. Okay, these are things that you already know is going on. You are already feeling the pain of trauma. Okay.